The next night we played in Douglasville, Georgia at the 7 venue. There, felt like going into it that we had a word from Ben Atkinson at RIHOP before we left that we were going to go into some places and there had been altars built up to the worship of men and the music and ultimately to demons. And that we were going to come in the opposite spirit and actually begin to tear down altars that had been built up by building our own altar. And it's the whole 1 Kings 18 that the 2 altars are built and the Lord sends fire to one. And so we just went in there, and as soon as we walked in, I think all of us felt immediately that this was that this was a place that, you know, really bigger name bands had come through and kids have kind of given their worship to these guys. And so it was really intense, and it was a Christian venue, so we were dealing with how that all works, you know, and what do we do. So we went into prayer before. We were the opening band that night, so the pros to be an opening band is we get to set the atmosphere for the rest of the show. The cons to it is that we have a real short set and we don't get to do a lot of ministry from stage. And so most of our ministry was off stage in Douglasville. And so we went into prayer before the set, and we just really felt like that our number one job that night was just to glorify the name of the Lord and declare the greatness of God and build an altar of worship and praise. Yeah. We're out of Isaiah.
Yeah, Isaiah 46. Yeah, basically it just, in Isaiah 46, like, it goes and talks about Israel, and it talks about I guess the altars they have set up, and it describes how Israel was looking to these altars of worship and these idols that they had built to heal them and to satisfy them and to fill their needs. And basically God goes on, basically, like God says to the prophet Isaiah, he says, like, your altars won't satisfy you, your worship, like, to these idols will not satisfy you. They can't move from where you've built them, they can't come down and help you. Like, he basically says, like, I am the Lord God, like, there's none but me, there's no other, there's no one who can satisfy you, like, I grant righteousness, I grant salvation. And it was just like, kind of like, basically we were all feeling it, like, right when we got there, the whole, like, building an altar of worship for the Lord instead of to man and to idols and demons.
Yeah. So I was that morning meditating on Psalm 104, which is talking about declaring the greatness of the Lord, and that he wraps himself in light, that his garments are splendor and majesty.
Yeah.
And so we went in there and we just began, even in the backstage in the green room, just began to worship, and we entered into a place of high praise, even before the set. I felt like a lot of the building of the altar we did was actually in that room before we even went on stage, and the whole atmosphere shifts when you do that. You know, worship changes the atmosphere, and high praise, and the Lord comes down and inhabits the altar of praise. And so we got up on stage and just worshipped, and during our set, I heard from a couple people that while we were playing, all they wanted to do was just praise and worship and declare how good and almighty and how awesome God was and the Lord was. And so most of our set was a real short set. We just worshipped, and I really felt like the spirit of worship came down, and I felt like we entered into that place. Got off stage, and then we just started to do what we do, but we were feeling some resistance. I know I prayed for a couple of people, nothing happened as far as healing. And then we come back in, and the last band that plays is a band called Fear Before, and their whole mantra and the whole setup is real dark, and it's as soon as they took stage, there was kind of just a darkness that came over the room, and there's just some really weird stuff going on. And so we're struggling to kind of break through.
We hear across the parking lot, this person starts screaming like bloody murder, and we look over there, and there's just a guy. He's like grabbing his head like a kid, and he's just screaming like in agony. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I ran over there, and ends up brother and sister were just horsing around, and the sister pushed him, and he tripped on a curb and bashed his head against the corner of a brick pillar, and so he was just freaking out. Blood was coming out of the back of his head, and he was panicked, and so I just put my hand on him and started praying. Didn't even ask, but he stopped crying, and I think just a peace came on him.
Yeah.
and then he sat down and got rags and were ice and stuff. And then me and Aaron started praying for him, and he had stopped crying and stopped freaking out. And he said the pain went away.
Yeah, he said his head like kind of stopped hurting.
Yeah, 'cause he said,
And at that point, the blood had kind of stopped a little bit. But mainly his family was real blessed that we prayed for him. Like a whole piece kind of just fell on the situation.
Totally. So we went back in at the end of the show, kind of wrapped it up, and I noticed one of the lead singers from the band that played after us was limping around. Actually, his bandmate is from Spokane, Washington, and actually went to the church that John G. Lake started. And so we walked up, and he said that, and I'm freaking out. Josh is freaking out. You know, we're talking about John G. Lake, and he's like, well, my band, and his bands, they're not a Christian band. He's like, my lead singer, he's got shin splints, and he's got a messed up foot. I was like, where is he? Let's go get him. So we ran and grabbed him, and we started praying for his foot. And immediately when we're in the venue itself now, and as soon as we start praying for his foot, the people that ran the venue had recorded our set, and they recorded the interlude where I was preaching and declaring the beauty of Jesus. And as soon as we started praying for him, I don't know if you guys heard this, but it came over the speakers and they started to play it, and immediately I felt the atmosphere begin to open up again after everything that happened with the last band, and so we start praying for him, and his foot starts feeling better. So his foot gets healed. It's like 75% better. And so he goes, we start packing up, you know, and he comes up to me afterwards, and he's like, dude, you know what, I'm actually a believer. My dad's a pastor in Washington, and but I kind of, you know, I'm in the scene now and whatever, and I could tell he was trying to figure out what he was trying to tell me, and he's like, but my foot feels way better. Like, thank you for praying.
Yeah.
But we really felt like the crux of what we were doing that night was building an altar and tearing down the altar built to men and to demons, and building up an altar which changes the atmosphere, leaves an open atmosphere for the Lord to do things after we leave, you know.
Yeah.
So then we stayed that night with the Gilkisons. What's up, Gilkisons?
Hey.
Sheila and Fred/Frank. And Fred, I called you Frank to your face, and you let me go. You let it slide. So thank you very much. And stay with him that night is a real encouragement. Just felt like it was just kingdom. It was just so kingdom to be with those guys, and just felt like we were all in one accord. And that morning we woke up and went downtown Atlanta with him to feed the homeless. They do it every Sunday morning. They go to a liquor store downtown and they feed the homeless and do some ministry. So we went down there just to kind of see what would happen, mainly because we were kind of messed up from not getting much breakthrough the night before, and so I just wanted to see somebody healed and meet Jesus. So we go down there and we start talking to them. There's probably 50, 60 homeless people there, and so we start talking to them. And so Josh and I get up and we make an announcement, you know, to everybody that if they need sickness or they need healing and they need deliverance or whatever, come see us. And so these people start coming up, and we just start praying for them. We led this one lady through deliverance. She was dealing with all kinds of afflictions. I don't even have time to go into the number of things that was wrong with her. And by the end, she's on the ground weeping, and I felt like the Lord was really moving on her. You guys were praying for another girl. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, we prayed for this woman with a messed up back and a messed up ankle, and and some wrist problems. It was me, David, and Michael, and she got completely healed. Everything we prayed for got healed, and she was crying. She was really touched in the middle of a liquor store parking lot. It was awesome. But yeah, and David got a word of knowledge for a guy's back, and he went and found him in the crowd and prayed for him, and he got healed. And
yeah, it was cool. Before we made that announcement, David had gotten that word that somebody had a messed up back. And so he's like, hey, I got a word of knowledge. Let's go find who it is. And he just felt led to walk to a certain part of the line where they were all lined up. And he was like, does anybody have a messed up back over here? And the guy was like, yeah. And so we laid our hands on his back, and instantly he just started laughing and was like, yeah, the pain just left my back. And the guy right behind him had back problems too. So we prayed for him, and the same thing happened. So it was a good time.
I guess if we couldn't get breakthrough in the venue, at least we can go find the homeless.
There you go.
And,
Just go to the streets.
So that was Douglasville.